Jane Norman, Chapter and Verse. Prologue. This is a rather novel approach to describe the life and times of a TV star. It's a novel approach because Jane Norman is the stuff of novels. Jane, the child musical prodigy turned teacher, turned beloved children's performer, turned author, musician, and multifaceted entertainer. Imagine the 1940s and a concert at Wanamaker's famous Crystal Tea Room with a 4-year-old child prodigy at the piano. Now fast forward a few years to Philadelphia's famed Academy of Music, with legendary Eugene Ormandy conducting the Philadelphia Orchestra in a piece composed by this now 8-year-old prodigy. Fast forward again to a flying pixie on television, everyone's own Pixanne. And this is just the beginning of the novel life of Jane Norman, Chapter and Verse. Chapter 1, Growing Up Jane. Our Jane began her musical career at the age of 2.5, playing Mozart on the family piano and composing original musical pieces. Her parents recognized her musical talents, and Jane began piano lessons at the tender age of 3. After 13 years of piano performances, her young career took a most interesting path. At 15, she became a counselor at a summer camp for underprivileged children in Pennsylvania. Here she wrote and directed 7 musical productions. The campers were treated to Broadway-quality music, which left a lasting impression. Years later, when she appeared as Pixanne at a personal appearance before thousands of kids and their parents, one of the mothers approached Jane to thank her and told her that she became a musician because of her exposure to Jane's musical theater shows at camp many years before.
The world abounds with many delights, magical sights, fanciful flights, and those who dream on beautiful nights dream of beautiful things.
And Jane Norman has been inspiring millions of children to follow their dreams ever since. At 15.5, Jane did something that changed her life. She read an ad in the trade paper Variety about a summer stock company looking for apprentices. She took a train to New York, met the producers, told them she could drive, which she couldn't, auditioned, and came back with a job. That summer of her 16th birthday, Jane became a major part of the Windermere Summer Playhouse in Bar Harbor, Maine. The acting bug had officially bitten. Chapter 2, Teacher Extraordinaire. After graduating from Temple University, where she majored in education and minored in theater, radio, and television, in fact, Jane was one of the only females in the communication department at the time, she decided to teach kindergarten. And there's no doubt that her 5-year-old students were the beneficiaries of her unique talents. Her delighted students were enjoying music as a prime teaching tool, a most unusual core curriculum at the time. Jane recognized that one of her students was very talented and urged his parents to give him piano lessons. Fast forward 40 years. Jane and her husband checked into the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco, and headlining the show in the main room was none other than that student, Billy. He recognized his former kindergarten teacher in the audience and called her on stage. After thanking her for believing in him, Billy asked her to sing as he accompanied her. This magic moment was surreal for both Jane and her former student, and the audience loved it. Legendary businessman and travel guru Hal Rosenbluth also talked about Jane's teaching prowess in his book Good Company. Rosenbluth says he used many of her techniques, which he learned at age 5, in working with thousands of his employees. Another of Jane's students became an Undersecretary of State. Could it possibly be that everything they ever needed to know, they really did learn in kindergarten? Chapter 3, TV Gains a New Star. Jane soon realized that although her heart was in teaching, her soul was in music and performing. She knew television was the way to go. It was the 1960s, so Jane headed to where the major TV stations lined City Line Avenue. She tried first Channel 6 and was fortunate enough to meet with Lou Klein, who had been one of Jane's instructors at Temple. But the station already had a children's program, and so Lou steered Jane across the street to the CBS-owned station, WCAU, Channel 10. Jane told the program director that she would do the best children's show he had ever seen. Well, he must have believed her because he told her to come back with a program idea. And that night, at the dinner table, Pixanne was born. First, Jane created the title character, Pixanne, which was based on her favorite flying boy, Peter Pan, although Pixanne was definitely female. Jane had always wanted to play Peter Pan on Broadway, and now she had a chance to create a female flying pixie all her own.
Swing on a star, carry moonbeams home in a jar, and be better off than you are. Or would you rather be a pig?
Next, she knew a protagonist was needed. Windy Witch was perfect. Jane played both characters, although most children never realized that. Kids loved Windy because she was playful, a little naughty, and unpredictable. Jane also played Susie, the French witch, who taught viewers a bit of French in her own unique way. The Pixanne show took place in a magic forest where anything imagined could actually happen. Jane knew young people needed fantasy in their lives, and Pixanne, as well as the other magical forest inhabitants, provided that fantasy world with music, stories, puppets, and a fanciful plotline, all used to entertain and educate. Now, Jane was ready to offer her TV creation to the world.
No kidding. Well, let's see if you've learned anything about them. How are craters formed?
How are craters formed? Well, let me see now. Yes. Ice is formed by the cold.
Yes.
1 month after pitching the show to Channel 10, Pixanne was on the air in glorious black and white. It debuted on Saturday mornings. After Inquirer television critic Harry Harris, whose daughter Terry Jane had taught in kindergarten, gave the show a favorable review, Pixanne was extended to 6 days a week, settling into a daily 9 a.m. time slot following Captain Kangaroo. In no time at all, Pixanne's ratings surpassed the Captain's and also outrated almost every other show, including all but one soap opera. Pixanne even outrated the early evening news. The show was a phenomenon. Guest stars loved visiting the Magic Forest. Jacques Cousteau had a conversation with a dolphin puppet. Tiny Tim could tiptoe through the tulips in the Magic Forest. Lassie and John Provost met Windy Witch and Pixanne. Dennis the Menace and Gene London were also forest friends. But best of all was the flying. Jane knew that all children wished they could fly, and they loved Pixanne's flying more than anything. One little girl wrote to Pixanne telling her that her father planted a special tree next to their house so that Pixanne would know where to land when she came to visit. That is devotion. Pixanne actually flew only twice each show, into the forest at the beginning and out of the forest at the end. But these flights left an indelible impression on each and every viewer, kids and parents alike. The first time the studio techs tried to fly Jane, a cable broke, and down she went onto the concrete floor. Then a professional was brought in, Peter Foy, who flew Mary Martin in the original black and white production of Peter Pan on CBS. In fact, Jane wore Mary Martin's harness when they finally taped the flying sequence for Pixanne's shows opening and closing. The only problem was that Jane insisted no guide wires be visible, as was the case in the original TV production. Jane learned to balance herself on only one guide wire so viewers would not see wires and be disillusioned. Peter Foy didn't think it was possible for Jane to keep from spinning when attached to only one wire, but after 8 hours of practicing, she was able to do it. But the result was that for many months, Jane had welts and bruises all over her body from remaining in the harness so many hours. She says, however, it was well worth it because to this day, millions of children and adults truly believe Pixanne can fly. And oh, the sponsors loved Pixanne. One drawing contest in Philadelphia for Oscar Mayer generated 20,000 responses. When repeated in New York City, 500,000 entries were received. Audiences grew so quickly that Pixanne's personal appearances took on epic proportions. 22,000 fans at the Philadelphia Zoo, thousands at local supermarkets and other venues. Her promotions were legendary. Over one Valentine's Day weekend, more than 472,000 telephone calls were placed from children wanting to hear a special message from their favorite pixie. Circuits were jammed all over the city in one of the most dramatic displays of affection ever shown for a children's television personality. Jane was a producer who certainly knew how to grow her audiences. She never stopped trying to innovate. Pixanne was the first children's show to use special effects that are still being used today in more sophisticated forms. The show was one of the first local shows to leave the studio and do remotes, such as Pixanne's trip to Montreal, Canada in 1967 for the World's Fair, Expo 67. When climbing on top of the geodesic dome before it was completed, one of the construction workers down below shouted, "Hey, Pix!" Even Canadians knew about the flying pixie. Pixanne skated with Freddie Trinkler of the Ice Capades and introduced her viewers to Popoff, the famous clown from the Moscow Circus. Jane always tried to expand her young viewers' horizons, even creating the Pixie Press that explained to youngsters the news of the day in terms that they could understand. Not surprisingly, many adults watched as well. And why not? Every age group appreciates a little clarification about world events. Where's the Pixie Press when we need it now? Jane made sure the forest was filled with fun. World-renowned illusionist Jack Adams was a forest favorite, always astounding viewers with his incredible magic.
Fall deeper and deeper asleep. I want you to feel yourself weightless now and flying through the sky, flying endlessly through space and through the universe. Feel yourself floating, only balanced by one point, the point of relativity. Very good. Now I want you to imagine the entire starry sky and the circle of the universe passing over you and yourself passing through it. Very good.
And everyone loved the Addis Williams puppets, which never failed to delight and entertain.
Formed by the cold.
Yes.
Flowers are formed by June.
Yes.
Craters are formed by the heavy, heavy boots that are worn by the man in the moon.
Oh, no.
In addition to her loyal family following, Jane was a favorite of some patrons at a bar in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. They gathered each morning at 9 a.m. to watch Pixanne's every move, and they wrote her to say they also loved Space Girl, another character Jane did on Saturday afternoons. It was a quasi-science fiction, and the costume got an A+ rating. After 9 very successful years of daily broadcasts in Philadelphia, the powers to be at Channel 10 decided to replace Pixanne with a women's talk show, hoping to increase revenues. You can imagine the outrage from viewers that followed. Pixanne fans responded with thousands of letters supporting their favorite pixie. But the deed was done. So Jane took the show on the road up US 1 to New York City and Channel 5 WNEW-TV, where it aired not only locally, but was syndicated nationally. Pixanne cast her spell on the Big Apple in a big way, and once again, the Pixanne show outrated its competition. This time in the #1 market. Pixanne had a 17-year run like no other. Of course, Pixanne was really a prelude to what was to follow. After 17 years, it was time to move on. There was not much more to do in children's television, and kids were in good hands with Sesame Street. On to adults. Chapter 4, moving on. The young people who were Pixanne fans became young adults. It was time to create something for them. Jane and her husband, Frank Beasley, came up with the idea of a home maintenance series. They were 90-second features called Maintenance Ms., teaching women how to do simple repairs at home. The Maintenance Ms. features were syndicated to hundreds of television stations nationwide and became a huge hit, although Jane always said she felt like a fraud pretending she knew what she was doing.
Now, empty out the water, and voila, there's our ring. Well, now you've got your ring.
However, she was a good enough actress to pull it off. She and project consultant Jules Sametz, who was the maintenance person who did know what he was doing, collaborated on a book based on the TV series. Jane sold the book, Fix It and Save, to Chilton Publishing. But Jane missed the kids. She went on to co-produce 9 one-hour mini Broadway-like shows for CBS in New York, some of which were nominated for Emmys. She collaborated with puppeteer Addis Williams, who had done the Pixanne show with Jane for 17 years, and with director-choreographer Nick DeNoia. Next, she sold her first network show to NBC. The show she created was called the National Kids Quiz, and she chose Michael Landon to be the host. A really good move, as he was very popular because of his Little House on the Prairie series.
And now, the star of the National Kids Quiz, Mr. Michael Landon.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll tell you, I've got some questions for you. Do you think you have to go to bed too early? All right. Have you ever felt that your parents didn't respect your privacy? Did you ever move into a new neighborhood and think you'd never make friends? Have you ever been picked on by a bully? All right, well, today we're going to have some fun.
The show received glowing reviews and led to a best-selling book, The Private Life of the American Teenager, which Jane wrote with psychologist Dr. Myron Harris. Jane appeared on more than 95 network and local television programs in conjunction with that book, including The Today Show on NBC.
But most parents, don't most parents really suspect what's going on and just sort of don't want to know? Or are most parents under the illusion that Johnny and Debbie are
that's right.
great kids?
Oh, and they also think, well, mine is okay. But when he gets with a friend, that's when the problems start. They are so afraid of peer pressure, and yet...
And the syndicated Merv Griffin Show.
If you're the parent of a teenager, you'll definitely be interested in this next segment. My next guest set out to learn about the private life of the American teenager, and she compiled this book by the same name after surveying 160,000 teenagers. The results are unusually surprising, and here to give us some insight in the study is former teacher and producer of children's television shows. Here's author Jane Norman. Jane? Let's get to this book. I'm dying to find out what you found out from the American teenager. 160,000 interviews.
Really
What was the most surprising thing your study?
I think the fact that the #1 fear of teenagers has nothing to do with sex, drugs, drinking. We worry about that as parents.
Enough
that
about
scares
Virginia,
us, right?
right?
Yeah, we do. Their #1 fear is losing their parents.
Both the National Kids Quiz and The Private Life of the American Teenager covered topics such as bullying, shoplifting, drinking, and drugs, when those topics weren't discussed very much. Jane was always ahead of her time. And a little while later, Jane created a bedtime product for children. Tickety Ted Time for Bed sold out on the Home Shopping Network. She also did a series of activity and music cassettes that became million sellers. The Little Wonder Bus and the Little Red Fire Truck. Parents constantly write to Jane wishing they could still get those products to share with their own children. Chapter 5, Magical Music. Jane took a giant step with her next adventure. She had always wanted to sing with a full orchestra of renowned musicians, and now was the time. She joined forces with well-known conductor, pianist, and arranger Richard Rome, and over the next decade, they did 4 widely acclaimed adult CDs together. CDs of holiday music and music from the Great American Songbook. The 4 albums were played extensively on hundreds of radio stations nationwide and still are. The albums were recorded at Star City, the iconic Sigma Sound Studios, and at the Hooters Elm Street Studios. In addition, Jane and Richard did a delightful animal series of 4 CDs for children. Recording was Jane's passion. She always joked that when the time came to leave this world, she'd like to be sitting on a stool in the recording studio, hitting high C and just keel over. On key, of course. This talented musician continued to dazzle audiences as she performed a cabaret show from coast to coast.
Like a
child in wild anticipation, long to hear that old voice. Can't recall who said it, I know I never read it. I only know that falling in love is grand and holding hands at midnight 'neath a starry sky.
I really was 5. Now, don't laugh, I really was. And I know I was because my first true love, Bruce Nachman, now you know I could never make up that name. Bruce Nachman used to walk me home from kindergarten every day, holding my hand. Of course, my mother was holding my other hand.
So the way you wear your hat, the way you sip your tea, oh yeah, the memory of all that, oh no, they can't take that away from me. Then I shall tell them I remember you.
And I shall always remember you in this wonderful night. And my wish for all of you tonight and forever is great love. Thank you.
What is your association with Jane?
Well, I'm a producer, a theater producer, and I was out on the West Coast in Palm Springs visiting a dear friend who's been involved in some of our projects, and they were having a party for us. And one of the guests at this party, many people were there, and I got to meet Jane. And I found out that she has this illustrious singing career, and she's been a performer for many years. And I got so excited about this that I said, well, maybe you'd like to do a show in New York at 54 Below. So she, of course, is somebody who does not let opportunity pass her. So we became fast friends, and I put together a concert for her at 54 Below in New York City. It was amazing. It was a sold-out night. I have to say, I've not seen a performer like that who could connect with an audience to that level. I mean, she had that audience eating out of the palm of her hand, and they loved her and she loved them right back. And I think that one of the great parts about Jane, from getting to know her these last number of years, is that she is so well connected with people. And I think that one of the things that's allowed her to stand the test of time for audiences when she was talking to the children and now performing and all the other things that she's done, is the one thing that's remained consistent is the fact that everybody wants to feel loved and warmth coming from a performer and another human being. It's really nice to have that connection, and I think that's what Jane specializes in. I think that's why people love her so much.
No question of it, yes. Of course, my experience with her was on the television show for so many years, and working with Jane was an absolute delight. As a matter of fact, we could almost read each other's minds.
She's got this artistic head, but she also has this producing business head as well. So when you talk to her and you agree on something, you know it's going to get done. She's got all of her I's dotted and her T's crossed, and there are very few people in the world that you can count on to get something done, and she is definitely one of those people. So she's such a pleasure to work with from a producer's point of view.
Yes, of course, she controlled everything. She had to, she was the star of the show. But she also saw to it that we all contributed to what was being done, so that we all felt that we had a hand in the show.
Jane has always written new music, whether for her television program, her cabaret shows, or albums. And songwriting will always be a part of her creative life. She met producer John McCracken, who now works in Nashville, and through their collaboration, Jane is writing for recording artists in today's contemporary genres: pop, country, gospel, and more.
Jane is the quintessential performer, but she's one of the loveliest people I've ever met. She's just a fantastic human being, very joyful, very full of energy, full of life. What she offers, you know, in a working environment is something you just don't come across that often as a producer. You know, she's more than willing to work hard and you know, listen to some ideas. She has her opinions, but you know, we work very well together and became fast friends. There's a special magic in Jane's music. She's able to touch a lot of people with her music. It's I think kind of a non-generational music because there's elements that I think will appeal to every generation. Again, she has elements that are kind of like older Broadway and even Disney, but there's harmonic structure in her music is very modern, so it's that kind of, it's a tough thing to write as a songwriter, to be able to capture those things in a song, and she does it extremely well.
Now something special came my way, and I'm smart enough to know that I will never, never let it go. Baby, I will never leave you, hold that thought. Baby, I will not deceive you, hold that thought. Sometimes love can disappear, sometimes love is insincere, but our love is always here. Hold that thought.
One of Jane's most endearing qualities is to make people feel good. Her music is very inspirational. You know, there's a couple of really fantastic new Christmas type songs which are not easy to write either. Writing Christmas music, since it's been done so much, it's hard to have a unique voice in that, but I think Jane did that.
Chapter 6, Pixie Power and Beyond. To this day, the same Pixie persona pervades Jane's effervescent personality, and she'll forever have a special place in the hearts of millions. The next chapter of her story is still to be written, but she'll always be a broadcasting legend. In 2005, she was inducted into the Broadcast Pioneers Hall of Fame. Her ability to bring love and happiness into people's lives is what everyone will remember. This is her legacy.
Beautiful people, beautiful people too, beautiful people like you.
Oh, Danny, thank you for letting me come to visit you, and I'll come real soon again. Bye now, Dandelion.